Welcome into K-State Online. I am Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway. Wednesday, May 28th. Yeah, not Monday, not Tuesday. Various things going on in my life currently that are not very fun, but we are here on this Wednesday. Should be here tomorrow with a recruiting update for everybody. And then hopefully Friday is when we'll get to the conclusion of the quarterbacks. And that means that we've got 10 names left. So it would be a big show if everything goes according to plan the rest of the week. We'll just see how it goes. It'll be hit and miss. Apologize for that. Obviously, would like it to be more consistent, but other things that need to be handled right now. Before we get into the topic of discussion today, which is very important regarding K-State basketball, I want to remind everybody to go to cats2ireland.com right now because it's getting closer and closer to kickoff of the 2025 Aer Lingus College Football Classic. And you want to make sure that you're going to be there when the Cats and Clones battle it out in the Emerald Isle. So if you want tickets, you need your travel covered, you need something to do while you're in Ireland other than watch a football game because you'll be there for a little bit longer than just the 3 hours that it takes this game to be played, Cats to Ireland has you covered. So cats2ireland.com. You can also go to kstatesports.com if you want to look around for just game tickets that might still be available, sneak in there past the deadlines that have been set a while back. So that's what you got going on with the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. Starting to do a little bit more digging on how I might spend my time in Ireland. So I did one thing last night at like 4 a.m. when I was feeding my daughter, but that's more digging than I had done. So maybe you've got activities in mind, Drew. You've got the fun facts.
I actually don't have a ton of activities. I know that I have so many family members and friends going that I'm sure that I'll probably do something with them, but my sister's in charge of all that stuff. So today's fun fact is kind of like what I talked about with how when we're over there, the daylight is so different. It says that in August, the sun can rise as early and be up as early as 5:30 in the morning in August, and can also the sun might not go down all the way until 10 p.m. So that's going to be very interesting to get used to.
Yeah, let's see. Average sunset in Ireland in August. The average sunset time in August in Dublin is around 8:50 to 9:38. So it varies on the date there, but that's quite the range there. So is that good or bad for you? All that daylight while we're over there?
I feel like it'll be good if it's actually sunny. If it's the clouds peeking in and
Yeah.
out, I feel like that's gonna be weird. But if it's sunny the whole time, I feel like it'll be fine.
Yeah. I did do one piece of serious preparation for our trip to Ireland. I bought a full blown rain jacket, one of the Nike Storm Fits that is from an era of their golf equipment that I really cherish. So yeah, watch out, folks. I've been wheeling and dealing on eBay once again. That is my addiction in life. It's not drugs, it's not alcohol. It's sometimes I go on eBay benders, and it is to the detriment of my family's finances, and my wife hates it. So yeah, I really dove into it my senior year of high school. I had some spending money from doing my job, and I'd sit in the office every day during third or fourth hour as an aide. So I would just browse through eBay, see what I liked. That kind of was my gateway drug, just looking around to see what was on eBay. And then my freshman year of college at K-State, lots of eBay packages sent to room 16 in Goodnoe Hall. So yeah, that really got me going. And now I just occasionally get fired up on there. So when's the last
Yeah, I
time you
respect.
bought something on eBay, Drew?
I think last year I bought some I think it was a Julius Brents rookie card on
Oh,
eBay for
yeah.
$5. I mean,
eBay's
you
good for
really.
cards.
Oh, eBay is electric for cards. You can get signed cards for K-State guys that have been that are just starting their careers and weren't the high picks like Josh Hayes for $2.
I like going through and just finding like what's a Mike Sweeney card going for these days, or more obscure guys. That's the thing that eBay is really good for, is when you see
Yeah.
that some dudes just have cards for insanely low amounts. I bought a Brad Keller rookie card autographed PSA 10
Oh wow.
for like $5 on there during COVID. So
Yeah,
that was
you're a big time Brad Keller guy.
and did you see he's been slinging it for the Cubs lately?
Yeah.
That's not what we're here for today, folks. We better get into the main topic of conversation, and that's that Jerome Tang delivered a big old Memorial Day bomb with PJ Haggerty. K State got into the mix here in the late going. Initially, seemed like maybe they were out of it, but I think things probably started to turn back in their favor once the reported price tag that PJ Haggerty had attached to him kind of started to dissolve and wasn't at that level. I know that there have been national media guys that have gone on to talk about Haggerty's dad handling his NIL and helping him along in this process and trying to find a home versus, using an agent. I don't care about any of that. It seems to be beneficial to K-State how it ended up working out, as they land an All-American who played at Memphis last year for Penny Hardaway, over 20 points a game. He was third in the country in points per game, can grab some rebounds, dish out the assists, but he's just a scorer. He finds a way to score, and you look at what he's done at Tulsa and Memphis. Now it's translating it back to a Big 12 level where he appeared in 6 games his freshman year at TCU. He got a red shirt for it, didn't play a ton. Now his 4th school in 4 years will be K-State, as he's back in a power conference. But this is significant for the Cats. And while if everything goes according to plan with PJ Haggerty, this would be one where you don't expect him to be here next season. He does have 2 years of eligibility remaining, so it's worth mentioning with that. But this is a massive get for K-State, one of those that we talked about where it does truly change the complexion of next season for K-State, where they go from, I think these are a bunch of nice one-off additions if you had the right team. Jerome Tang went out and landed the big piece that could tie all of those together and make K-State an NCAA tournament team again.
Yeah, that you hit the nail on the head. This is the addition that has really changed the complexion of what the entire offseason was. I mean, we sat here for a long time during this offseason, kind of talking about they had some nice pieces, but still were really missing that one like true difference maker. And PJ Haggerty is a difference maker. He takes this team from kind of near like that 13th, 14th range in the Big 12 to potentially even 10th or ninth. If like as a floor, because he is so good. He really tore it up at Memphis. It's always fun because college basketball, the movement and it is absolutely insane. Like when Haggerty initially transferred, I was like, huh, I totally forgot that he even played at TCU and started there before going to Tulsa and then at Memphis. But he is a true difference maker, can really score. It is truly that lead guard that K State was really missing. And I can't remember who it was that is in the national media that I've seen that KSU underscore fan has talked about. The one thing that Haggerty does really well, and even Nate Johnson to an extent, that K State was really missing is those are two guards that really can get to the free throw line. K State didn't have that last year. They didn't have that 2 years ago because it seemed like Tyler Perry, for some reason, just never got a whistle, which was bizarre. But Marquise Noel could get to the free throw line. Desi Sills could get to the free throw line in Tang's first year. Now Haggerty and Johnson can both get to the line. Haggerty is also a lead guard, so you're not really forcing somebody like Andre Kostic or somebody like Nate Johnson to be a lead guard. Haggerty is going to be able to do it all. And I think that really elevates what this team can do because now you're not forcing guys into roles that they're not comfortable with because you have Haggerty who has been there, done that, and done it at a very high level.
Yeah, it's also just, I mean, significant too that you're looking at a guy that it's not just, hey, he should come in and be really good. This is not Coleman Hawkins, who I thought was a really good player, and you're like, okay, but he has to show up and he has to go and be somebody he hasn't been. That PJ Haggerty has already been the guy on a team that made the NCAA tournament, and he's already been an All-American. This is not, you don't need PJ Haggerty to come in and be somebody he's never been before. And that's where now all the other guys that are going to be added into the mix for K-State, we've talked about some of them, but they don't necessarily have to do that to a different level either. Like Nate Johnson is a guy that I think is going to be good for K-State. I've mentioned numerous times that I think dudes that are defensive players of the year in their conference, I think that translates really well. But he's not going to have to go and try and do more on offense than he's ever done before. He can just come in and do what his skill set dictates him to be. You look around elsewhere, like the international talk that we've had with Andre Kostic coming in, that he goes from where, if Hagerty was not added, I think Kostic had to be K-State's best player next year. And while he very well could reach that talent level, as we've seen certain international guys come over and do, they're just kind of wild cards. It's still a dude that's having to adjust at a young age to come in and living by himself in the United States for the first time and playing college basketball versus the level he was playing. Like it's so different with how this thing works. So that's where it just kind of transcends everything for K-State, where Hagerty is, I mean, there's going to be a lot of expectations on him now. So, I think he'll be able to handle it. You go and do what he did at Memphis last year, and there were high expectations for him when he left Tulsa, but he's going to have to manage that. But I expect him to be able to do that. And you look around, like, it's significant that he's been able to score in his career without being just some lights out guy from three. The encouraging thing would be is that he got significantly better from three last year from what he was at Tulsa. I mean, he shot under 29% at Tulsa and still scored 21 points a game. Last year, still up over 21 points a game. Took a couple more threes a game, shoots it at over 36%. He found a way to get the job done, solid at the line. The rebounding numbers hang around there. This is a good get for K-State. The only thing now is, and I bring it up, from time to time because I do kind of like to give him some grief. Memphis played in the American, so that's a little bit of a red flag. But you go look at his numbers; he was A-okay against the teams that they played last year that were legit because Hagerty was battle tested. So this is where normally I would, one of these American guys go, okay, we'll see. No, he did this in the non-conference: 25 against Mizzou, 22 against UConn, 16 against Michigan State, 27 against Auburn, 12 against Clemson. That was his worst game of the year. He only got 10 shots off in the game. But then you go and look: 27 against Virginia, 24 against Mississippi State, 17 against Ole Miss. So he can do that. And then on the high end last year, he dropped 42 points in a game where Memphis needed every ounce of it against Wichita State in their first game of the AAC tournament. So they ended up winning that game by 3. Like, he's pretty impressive. He had 18 in the game against Colorado State. He struggled shooting the ball in that game, but that's going to happen. And I think the hope would be is that the roster is built up a little bit better around him than what the situation is at Memphis. And that's where what Jerome Tang and the approach this offseason has seemingly been is to kind of reset the type of players that they've brought in. And you want guys that are better personality fits, and you think that their game is going to translate a little bit better to being solid. Like, you don't have to expect things that they've never done before to happen. Now all of those things can happen because you got a player like PJ Haggerty. And it truly is a difference maker from K-State, where it turns next season into either this team is going to be in the NCAA tournament or it is another failure. And then you can start to weed out, based on how this team succeeds or fails next year, what the future of the program is moving forward, because we look back on it now and we kind of realize that, the best case scenario for K-State didn't really materialize the last 2 seasons, and the teams that they put on the floor were more destined to be good enough to just kind of be in the mix partway through the season, kind of a bubbly team, but on the wrong side of the bubble from the start. And now you look at this team, and I think that they should be constructed better to where they're not losing to a bad LSU team at home to start the season like last year's team did. They're not losing to Wichita State. This team is not doing that. Like, I just think you've built yourself to be in a little bit of a safer position. And then on the high end, I think you were able to get more done because you get a player like Hagerty. And you desperately needed somebody like this. And I mean, it sounds very repetitive, but I just don't think it can be overstated how significant this get is, because you needed to have somebody of this caliber and you were able to get him to give yourself a chance to be a team that was in the NCAA tournament next year.
Yeah, that's why I think that, like I said, like on the low end, you're probably thinking that K-State is in the like 8th, 9th position in the Big 12, like bubble team. But the high end, because you added an All-American, is probably not as high as like the top 4, top 5 in the league, but it would be a team that's just comfortably in the NCAA tournament. So I think that it's a big difference maker. It's also like we've talked all off season too about how, oh, like that's a nice piece, but you still are missing that difference maker. Here is your difference maker, and it's not crazy to think that this roster fits a lot better than the team that they put on the floor last year did, because now you don't have too many bigs and not enough guards. You've really kind of switched that to now you have a lot of guards and a lot of guys that can handle the ball. You're probably actually, ironically, after how last year was, if you had a ton of bigs, not a lot of playable bigs, but you had a lot of bigs. Now you're kind of thinking that you might not have enough bigs and enough guys that are playable bigs. So they've kind of shifted that, and guards win in college basketball, so I don't think that's like a huge deal. But I think that you're kind of, if you're trying to poke a hole on this roster, it is that they don't have enough bigs that can play.
Yeah, you're looking at a team right now that, in terms of the size of what you're going for, um, I mean, Tyreek Smith is 6'6", Kamari McGriff is 6'9", and then Marcus Johnson, we talk about, he's 6'7", but that's not really his position. Like he's more guard than he is big, despite the fact that he is physically big. And then you go down the rest of the roster. Moby will be there, but that's basically it. And then if they do end up confirming that Rapiake is in the fold, you look at a guy like that, he's 6'6" as well. And he is,
And he is more of a guard than a big too.
yeah. And so now this is where you look at K-State, where if Rapiake comes in, that would be the final roster spot scholarship wise that K-State is expected to use. The conversation is going to have to shift to, are you going to be able to find the resources to add another player into
And
the
that's
mix
not
there?
and that's also not resources just within basketball. That's finding resources for other sports as well, because you can't just keep adding these scholarships to the men's side. You got to find something on one of the women's sports as well. That's
Yeah.
finding 2 scholarships, one for a men's scholarship for basketball and then one for a women's sport as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that kind of goes into why, with everything that's going on and trying to, the uncertainty that comes with the revenue sharing and the roster limits that have been imposed, why there's some uneasiness and kind of unknown for all these programs, is because they don't know how to how do you navigate Title IX in this era now? And that's what they have to be mindful of. But I would say that the addition of Hagerty puts you in a position to where, if you're Jerome Tang and you go to Gene Taylor and say, we need to work this out and figure out a way to add another scholarship here, it makes it a lot easier to sell it now that you have Hagerty in the fold, because I mean, it's not just us that realize that Hagerty's a difference maker. I'm pretty sure Gene Taylor's sitting in his office going, okay, we've got an opportunity here
No,
once again.
It definitely does, but that's again kind of why we were so confused, I guess
Yep.
would be the right word about Steven Osei, because we've said for the last like 3 weeks that they're still missing a big that can play, and they still are. At least it
Yeah.
seems, because I think that you can get away with Tyreek Smith and Kamari McGriff, but it's also not 100% certainty yet still that Tyreek Smith can play.
Hmm.
And then what if one of those two gets injured, and then you're really running low on options at the five? But I think that you can get away with it because McGriff and Smith are both really long. Like, it's not like Houston's bigs last year were like both 7 feet. Like, they were both in that 6'6", 6'8" range, but were really long. And that's what Smith and McGriff are. But the problem just does become, if one of those two gets injured, Osei is redshirting this season because he is injured. Marcus Johnson's not a five. Elias Rapiak isn't a five. Abdi Bashir definitely is not a five. Like, you just don't have options to play at the five, unless you're gonna unless you just play the one that isn't injured all 40 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. They're going to have to sort some things out here.
'Cause I
And
guess even Taj Manning, not a five. Like,
yeah.
eh,
And you're just not going to play him.
Moby
Like,
isn't a
it's,
five. Yeah,
yeah.
and Moby's not a five. Like, they only have two fives on the roster that can play, and one of them, we're sitting here. It's almost June, and we don't know if he is even going to be eligible to play.
Yeah. It's a tricky spot, and I'm glad that you said it because I was going to say it. The Osei thing, like this is why you go. Ah, I get when you get a player like Haggerty again. That's an addition that can make a little bit more sense now, where you can maybe stash a guy and have something that makes sense for the future. It's just really tough when like there are still you've addressed the biggest need on your team, a legit number one that ties everything together, but you still have a pretty big one in that, like you're talking about, you need probably another big. You need to feel like you've filled out that depth. So it's going to be interesting to see what K State does moving forward. If there is any room for some more additions to be made, and if they can get that big. But Haggerty is obviously a phenomenal way to essentially close out the roster for the upcoming season, and certainly a difference maker for K-State, and puts them in a position where you'd like to think that they'd be back into the NCAA tournament. Now he's third in the on-3 portal rankings. He only comes in behind Yaxel Lindeborg from UAB and Bennett Sturts from Drake, obviously, and then just ahead of Jaden Quaintance from Arizona State and RJ Lewis from St. John's. Kind of weird that Yaxel Lindeborg would be higher than PJ Haggerty. They were in the same conference, and one of them, was the best player in the conference, and the other, but All-American type stuff. Lindeborg, very good though.
Uh, it's because the NBA people love Yaxel. Well, I mean, you also listed off the top five. It's not like a certainty that Jaden Quaintance can even play next year because he tore his ACL so late into the season.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That'll be an interesting one. But K-State comes through. They add Hagerty. You go and see what they've done to build out this roster now with the status of their commitments this year. We've talked about some of the others. Abdi Bashir was obviously a significant get. Nate Johnson was a big one. Three of the top 80 players in the transfer portal committed to K-State this offseason. And that's a significant enough number to give you some hope. And then, like we've talked about, I like a lot of the pieces that they've added this year, just as they feel safe to me, where we look back on last year now and realize that it wasn't. I don't know in the moment that it wasn't safe, some of the additions, because you start to look at what they did, and like Max Jones basically did what we expected him to do. Maybe a little
The
better in some areas. Brennan Hasen better, but it was the guys that were supposed to be at the top of the line that didn't come through.
and I think if you look back on that, like, it's probably not fair to say now because we just know when we have hindsight. But like, there were some warning signs that Doug McDaniel wasn't going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a lot
Well,
of warning signs.
and here's what I'll say, because a lot of people know that I'm an anti-Penny guy, anti-Memphis. I think it's all, a big circus down there, and I don't subscribe to a lot of how things happen with that program. Um, so that's where some concern would come from Hagerty. I know that a lot of people would also look at it and just kind of go fourth school in 4 years. So these are a bunch of red flags that would normally pop up for people. I look at it and say, the four schools in 4 years thing for Hagerty makes a little bit more sense when you look at it. Like, didn't play a ton at TCU, got his red shirt. He went to Tulsa, elevated his profile from a dead end program, and was able to go and cash in on it last year, and went to Memphis. And now the opportunity was there to do it again. And, tested the NBA waters, going to come out of that. And you look then at the situation, like, he's had 2 good years in the American. And while we listed that he's done just fine against power competition, I think that there is another level to where you go, even if it's Memphis, who's perennially making the NCAA tournament now because Penny's feasting on a bunch of inferior programs, and he's making ends meet because of his name and his status. I mean, he's the original Deion Sanders in college sports, just going and picking on a bunch of teams that have no chance against him because he's the big professional name there. Now Hagerty comes to the Big 12, and that's an option. So I'm not overly concerned about that. And, you can look at a guy and say, he got out of Memphis after a year. But always can be, but the game translates a lot better to where, with Doug McDaniel, it wasn't just some of the red flags that maybe were skipped over there. Like, we probably should have talked about more off of last season, Doug McDaniel not being allowed to play in road games at Michigan. And then on top of that, like, he just hadn't fully come into himself as a player yet. Like, there were inconsistencies in his game at Michigan and on a night-to-night basis. And we saw those again last year. And then, the off-the-court stuff that came with it. Hagerty, even if that stuff's there, which I'm not overly concerned about it in the moment, every single night he was showing up and giving Memphis an opportunity to win games. So it's a different situation there than Doug McDaniel. But I felt like I needed to address it since, me, anti-Penny guy, normally
No,
get these Memphis dudes away from me. PJ Haggerty, you can get this Memphis dude close to me.
no, I'm right there with you. I think this is a huge, huge, huge addition.
But the recent cats that have ended up with Penny, they profile as Memphis guys. So there you go. Enjoy Doug McDaniel, Penny. So there we go. That's PJ Haggerty. He is a Wildcat, K-State. Unofficially done adding things. Officially still have one open scholarship spot. We anticipate that belongs to Elias Rapiake, but we don't know. We don't have official word or clarity on that, so we shall see how it ends up working out. And then beyond that, not a lot else going on with basketball right now. We talked about the hirings last week. That is significant. The basketball program has to prove it, and I'm going to be very firm in my stance with that. But they have quickly done a lot of things that set the path towards getting back on track, to look a lot better and more likely to actually falling into place. But now they got to go out and prove it on the court next season, and we won't get answers to that until November, and we're sitting here in May. So we've got, a little right around 5 months to go, a little over 5 months to go before we get those answers. But there you go. That's the book on PJ Haggerty. We will have a recruiting update tomorrow. That means that we will kind of preview the official visits of the weekend for football. K-State gets that started in earnest. And then we'll look ahead to Friday. And as long as everything goes according to plan, we'll talk quarterbacks again, close out the top 25 quarterbacks of the last 20 seasons at K-State. And then we'll reset with a fresh week tomorrow. I would imagine that we'll have some hit and miss stuff with our scheduling over the next week or so, but we'll get it figured out as it goes along. As always, we appreciate you following along with our coverage at K-State Online, whether it's over at KSO in On3, which you can become a member of for just $1 during your first week right now to get access to the entire list of official visitors this weekend from Drew, information on what's going on with recruiting and everything else K-State football and basketball related. And then also, we always appreciate you taking in the stuff here on YouTube and the podcast. We'll get out of here today. That'll do it for us. You can go enjoy. Probably not live. You're not going to see this in time, but you can go back and listen to Drew's appearance on the game on K-Man later tonight or tomorrow, whenever it is that you're listening. He hopped on with Mitch Fortner to discuss K-State sports, probably a lot more of what we talked about here. And then we'll be back again the rest of the week. So for Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. Thanks for watching and listening to K-State Online.